Everyone, and welcome to Support Someone Saturday. I'm so excited to be here today with my good friend, Elissa Polley, all the way from Dallas. Here she is. She is Director of Survivor Advocacy at Traffick911 down in Dallas. How are you doing, Elissa?
Doing great. So good to see you today, Amy.
I'm so excited that you are here. This is awesome. Prior to joining the Traffick911 team, Elissa spent 15 years as a professor who taught English to students from over 80 countries around the globe. And she and her husband, Jeff, and their 3 children also like to travel around the globe. And I feel the same way. I love to travel as well. I got that in common with you. The desire for Elissa to become an abolitionist for children began back in 2009 when she met children victims of trafficking through her volunteer work. So the passion grew to a place that prompted her to move from Texas to Virginia to attend Regent University School of Law. And during her time there, she was student staff for the Center of Global Justice and Human Rights, which enabled her to focus her study on the issue of human trafficking, both domestically and globally. She spent time interning in DC with Shared Hope and the National District Attorneys Association, where she assisted with the Protected Innocence Project and researched human trafficking cases. He spent time on the Hill and Senate in hearings and collaborated with lawmakers regarding human trafficking issues. I think that's awesome. He connected with Traffick911 in 2014, engaging with them as a legal intern, advocating for victims through the legal process. She also completed legislative policy recommendations on behalf of Traffick911. Elissa continued to volunteer until or in juvenile outreach upon completion of law school, which is awesome. You are very smart, and I know you've gotten a lot of education. I admire you for that. So she continued that until she returned to Dallas from Virginia. Elissa has a strong desire to be a voice in and out of the justice system for victims of trafficking. And since 2017, she served in full-time capacity at Traffick911. As I said, she's currently the Director of Survivor Advocacy. As part of Traffick911's empowerment program, she oversees the Voice and Choice Advocate program focused on child sex trafficking survivors. And I would love to hear more about that, Elissa. So you'll have to tell us about your program. So I have to mention that Elissa and I go way, way back. So we go back to like Minnesota. We both grew up in small towns right by each other. We attended the same church. Our families attended. We probably met each other during our college age years, and we were youth leaders. We went to mission trips together. We used to run together, and we prayed together. It was just amazing. We were in each other's weddings, and we have stayed in touch ever since. So I just love Elissa and I have had like a kindred spirit. I think we have a lot in common, and it's just cool to see how we've been able to cheer each other on over the years. So thank you, Elissa, for joining us today and supporting me too. I appreciate it. So tell me more about the mission and the approach of what you're doing at Traffick911. I'd love to hear more about the Voice and Choice Advocate program as well.
Yeah, it's been a real privilege to work with Traffick911 over the past several years. And as you mentioned, I had interned with them during law school, and that was just really eye-opening for me because when I first came across the victims of human trafficking back in 2009 in Dallas, I was just, I was really of the mindset that was something that happened overseas. Mm-hmm. And so it was really eye-opening to find out that was something that was happening right in our major cities, in the backyards of some of the nicest communities you could imagine. Kids that are trafficked come from all ethnic, social, economic backgrounds. It's not just one type of kid that is targeted for trafficking. It's really any child that is vulnerable, any child that is really maybe neglected in different ways. And I think it's a powerful statement just to recognize like all of us can learn and grow and be aware. And so that's really how my journey began, is just thinking that it was just a over the ocean issue, and to recognize that it's a domestic issue here in the US, and it's a very prevalent problem and a challenge for us. So Yeah, Traffic 911 has been around for almost 11 years now, but really just started out as a grassroots organization, just very small, mostly volunteer led for several years. And then as the team had worked in juvenile detention centers working with youth, we were just finding more and more youth that were making outcries that, they didn't even understand necessarily what had happened to them. And so through those juvenile outreaches, we just recognized that there was such a need for when kids left juvenile detention that they had some support in the community. They want to be in their community. They don't necessarily want to be in a facility or a rehab or a space like that. They want to be with people. They want a family. And that's where one of the biggest vulnerabilities come in is these youth want a family. And if their biological family is not present, they're going to find a family. And statistics show that when a child leaves a home within 48 to 72 hours, they're going to be approached by a predator, and it just, that stat is kind of staggering. And, this topic is kind of heavy and dark, but at the same time, I want to share the hope of it today too, that there's really so much hope because there's more awareness. Like even having this conversation today is really powerful because I think we want those kids to have a voice and we want to empower them to use their voice, to make healthy choices. But that journey kind of led the team to start looking at options for how we could serve more youth in the communities around Dallas, Fort Worth, and really North Texas and Texas as a whole. And through that, we came into contact with a grant opportunity through the governor's office on child sex trafficking. So our current governor and his wife are huge proponents of anti-trafficking. And so they just really see, just as so many leaders do, that children are our future and just really wanted to fight hard to see that happen. So we were given a funding opportunity back in 2017 that has really enabled us to expand our team and really get out into the community. Much more. And so currently our primary role is to be a team of voice and choice advocates. And so our advocates are out in the field working with kids through different teams in different counties. And in this last quarter, we were blessed to be able to serve over 180 youth. And it's just really powerful because you think of COVID and all the challenges and really our goal when we see those youth, we do try to see them. And that's really the key is some people are like, what's your special sauce? But it really is relationship. And so we have a phrase that we use around the office that relationship is the intervention. And because I think sometimes we want to throw all these different things at these problems and really these kids are just longing for relationship. And as we know, there's lots of different types of relationships we can have in this world, but a loving, trust-based relationship is really what's going to garner any child to be able to move forward from the trauma that they've endured. And so it's just been really powerful. I started out as an advocate, and then our program started kind of blowing up. And so we just had to keep moving people around as we grew. But just seeing these kids face to face and seeing that they're just like our kids, they are children and they want to have a hope and a future. And so just walking alongside of them in their journey has been one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And it's not that we're coming in as their savior or their rescuer. We don't even use that word rescue because we don't want them to take on a mentality that, that's different than what the reality is, that they have the ability to recover, restore, rehabilitate. And so we try to use some of that language just to encourage them, like they're empowered and they can do this and we'll walk alongside them. But we're learning just as much from them as they are from us.
That's so good. I love that. I love what you said about relationship and that you're really not like the main rescuer. I mean, really, I think Jesus or God could be our main rescuer, and really they have to start to learn to advocate. But the whole thing is relationships. I think it is so important. And even as we've gone through this pandemic and COVID, and it seems like it's been harder to connect, right, in ways in different states, it's different. We're up here in Illinois. Our kids are just going back to school next week in person. So it's been, over 10 months. So I just think it's so important, like finding ways to stay connected. And, thankfully our church opened up in the fall. Our kids just gone back to church. But I think we need that, like you said, and especially kids that have come from broken homes. I agree. They crave that. I know you said there's a lot of information out there and a lot of unknowns as well. And I was looking at your website and it says misinformation about trafficking does more to harm victims in our communities. So we have to understand the issues. So I know that this is a big topic. It's a broad topic. I'm thankful you're here. So maybe you can tell us more. What are those issues that we should all be aware of? What can you tell us, Elissa?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I think when people hear the word human trafficking or child trafficking, they have an immediate visual of a child being grabbed and thrown into a van, or a kid playing at the playground and being taken and put into the sex trade. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. We have had a handful of cases over the years that has been the case, but the majority of youth that are lured into sex trafficking, it is really because of a vulnerability. It is really because they already have some red flags, if you will, in their life that show that they're lacking something, and that could be basic needs. They might have a lack of food. Their house, may not have food available, and shelter is volatile. Many times we have the brokenness of family. That's a reality in our world, and so there can be different partners coming in and out of the house, and that just creates a vulnerability for that child to be sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally abused. And so all of those factors kind of play together to really create sort of the perfect storm for a child to maybe leave a home or a structure of a home and go searching for maybe that felt safety. They want to feel safe where they are, right? And if they don't get that at their home, they're going to go try to find that elsewhere. And so I just think it's one of those things that the misconception is that sometimes these kids choose it, that they want it, that they make the choice to do it. And a misconception is just that it's very glamorous, and kids are choosing this because they just want a different way of life. But the reality is it's really the exploitation of vulnerability. So, poverty, where you grow up, your home life, the abuse that you've endured can all create those red flags. And if not dealt with, can lead to more vulnerability, and that looking for love really in all the wrong places.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so I'm kind of thinking of what you're saying about, the broken homes, but then I'm thinking about what you said in the beginning, like, human trafficking can be everywhere, even in the nicest neighborhoods. And so maybe now talk to us about, like, as parents, like, say we're growing up in suburbia and we think, oh, this would never come here. This is a good community. Like, talk to us as parents, how can we help prevent our own children or our own daughters from falling prey into human trafficking? Like, what can we do to help them and even teach them to safeguard themselves? I know we live in a world that's online and all this social media. So can you give us some practical things we could do to educate and help prevent this from happening in our lives and families?
Yeah. I think that is one of the shocking things when people are like, oh, this is just happening in that neighborhood, and that makes sense, or this is just happening across the border because this, that, or the other thing. And I think the reality of it is it goes back to that relational piece. When children are lacking essential relationships in their life, they're looking for hope, they're looking for acceptance. And so as parents, I think the number one piece of advice I give to the parents that ask me this question, because we do get this one a lot, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want this to happen. No one wants this to happen to their child, is just know who your kids are connecting with. Absolutely pay attention. And one of the greatest examples I could give is we work with FBI and Homeland Security as well as local law enforcement in the recovery of these youth. And I was at a training, and one of the best ways I could explain this to you is, hey, if you knew that 3 houses down from your house there was a child predator that lived there, would you invite that child predator to come to your house and enter into your child's bedroom? And everybody's like, no, of course not. Of course we would never do that. But the reality is, when we allow our kids to use their devices unsupervised and get online without any proper supervision or the understanding of the dangers that are online, we're doing that very thing. Because for every 6 people online on social media platforms, there's at least one predator. And so it just gives you that idea that we're allowing our kids, my kids do it, I have 3, and we've just really had to talk through, and I know they feel sorry for themselves because I'm their phone. They're like, oh my gosh, do other kids have to do this? And I'm like, not always, but you'll thank me later, right? That's what we always say.
Mhm.
Just knowing who they're connecting with
Yeah.
online, what they're doing on their phone, how much time you're giving them to be in that online world is really a critical
Mhm.
thing to think about, because you just want to know that they have, just as you would, if you're sending your kid to go to a sleepover at that house, you're going to know who's there and who the parents are, who's going to be around, what are they going to do. That same thing needs to be true for the devices that you allow for your kids to be on, that
Yeah.
who they're connecting with. And look up the apps online and see what the safety rating is, see what age the child should be to be on that platform, because there's just a lot of really dangerous apps, Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, Snapchat, Moco Space. There's a whole list of them, and we do have some resources on our website for parents.
Okay, that's good to know.
So I would recommend looking at the website too, because there's some different clips and different information. But if I could say the one thing, it would just be like, know who your children are connecting with and who
Mhm.
they're spending time with, and those phones are a real
Yeah.
risk. We see a lot of online exploitation, and even in this last season of COVID, with more people being at home, our numbers for online exploitation have gone through the roof. So it's
Mm.
just really important to know who they're connecting with.
I think that's so good that you're sharing this. I think we all need the awareness. And like you said, we have to educate ourselves as parents and then even to educate our children, and kind of walk them through what some of these things may be. I kind of feel like as my kids are getting older, I want to prepare them for the real world. So how can I teach them, right? To see things that aren't right, like say for instance, they're on Instagram, like don't direct message someone, that you don't know, and kind of teaching them about like predators and things. And so, yeah, it's conversations I've had with the kids, over the years. And, kind of even before I would teach them like what to look for at school and what people might be trying to say to you. So, yeah, I feel like the more we can be aware and know in ourselves and then teach them, the better off they'll be, because like that knowledge is power and, equipping them for what lies ahead, So I love that. So that I
Yeah.
think it's great you have resources online to look at. I would like to look at those myself.
Yeah.
You mentioned being an advocate and you have, that's how you started out. Say that we're not working, like you are full time at Traffick 911, but we just want to be advocates, like we're in our neighborhood, we've got kids, maybe we're helping at the school or in our community. What if we notice someone that we might feel like, or we hear, and this is, I don't know if this is going to throw you for a loop, this question, but maybe our child even says, hey, this person at school or this friend of mine, we know that they're starting to go down this path or they are. What can we do, just as citizens, as people that are concerned? Is there anything we can do to help out
Yeah.
and respect that?
Yeah, I think what's really important, to think about is that very thing. Like, you can advocate for other kiddos, and if you see something, say something. That
Mm-hmm.
we encourage people as we do these trainings in the community. Like, don't be afraid that people will be like, oh, why'd you call? It's never,
Mm-hmm.
when it relates to a child being in danger, it's never wrong to call and just provide the information first and foremost to your local law enforcement. But what
Mm-hmm.
I do as a recommendation is, if you call your local law enforcement, you need to give them as much information as you can. Like, hey, I saw three young ladies by this hotel. They all had backpacks and they seemed really unhappy. One was crying and there was an older person that was not treating them well. I don't know what's going on, but just go check it out. Like,
Yeah.
that is always something you can do. You can request a welfare check, and you just want to kind of have your ducks in a row,
Yeah.
give information, describe the kids as best as you can, what they might be wearing, or what's going on, what that potential perpetrator could look like. And then the other part is to call the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Okay.
And I can provide that number for you as well.
Yeah, that'd be great if you do.
To the end. But if you call your local law enforcement and give them that information, and then you follow up with a call to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, what they do is they take down that information and then they go back and circle with the local law enforcement to make sure there was a follow up to that lead. So it's kind of a dual way that you can make sure that whatever you see is at least put into the hands of people, that can act upon it. I would recommend never approaching a youth or a situation like that by yourself. It's just not safe to do. So many times perpetrators are armed and they're, may not be well. They may be on substances that are dangerous, so you never want to approach a situation on your own. That's just far too dangerous. But we have so many amazing law enforcement
Yeah.
folks out there that are willing and wanting to get out there and recover youth out of those dangerous situations. So
That's good. That's good advice. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Because, I think sometimes we might want to help, but it's how do we help, So thank you for letting us know how we can, and kind of this approach I have taken over the years with different things. Like if I see emergencies on the road, like my family used to joke with me because, I do have a background in criminal justice. Like I'm a cop wannabe, but there's like people, right? Like one time a van was on fire in the middle of the median on the expressway. And one time this guy was like slumped over his motorcycle. I'm like, did he fall asleep or did he pass out? Is he having a heart attack? I often will call it in because I feel like, everyone thinks, oh, someone else will do it. Like we live outside of Chicago. There's so many people going by, but maybe no one is, everyone's saying that. So someone has to call and say, hey, someone's needing help here, so not being afraid to be the one to be the advocate and say, hey, there's someone in need. And I always kind of think of it, if the shoe was on the other foot and I was in major distress, I would want to know that there was caring people around that were looking out for me and maybe making the call, So yeah, I think that's important. Okay, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about a success story. I'm sure you have a lot. So I don't know if there's one or more that you can think of that you can share with us, people that have been helped through Traffic 911. We'd love to hear from you.
yeah, and one thing we've learned through this journey, is just having the privilege to walk along hundreds of youth. It's just been such a powerful experience.
Yeah.
It's so hard some days, but it's also just
Mhm.
the best thing on other days, just because we get to share hope. And then kids just have hope,
Mhm.
even when they've been in just a really difficult situation, they have
Yeah.
hope. And so it's just been a cool journey to walk alongside of them. But I can share just a couple of shorter ones. One youth I've been working with over 3.5 years now, and she's moved into adulthood now, but she was trafficked at a very young age, 12 or 13, by a trucker. So she was
Mm.
running across state lines and trafficked in some different states, and they did get that perpetrator, and he is in jail. But through that journey, she just experienced a lot of trauma, and really, when we first met her, she was not about it. She's like,
Mhm.
I don't trust anybody. I don't want any help. I don't need any help. I got this. And that can really be a perspective that they come in with because they've been trained to not trust anybody, especially if they come in with the recovery with law enforcement. They just think that, they've been told that they're out to get them. And sometimes they are violated by people in authority. So there is that lack of trust, but it's just been a beautiful journey with her. She's gone through some real highs and some lows, and
Mhm.
these kids don't just run away once, they're recovered and then everything is perfect. The
Yeah.
recovery is really the very first step to their healing. And sometimes they'll relapse and they will run away again
Mhm.
because of more trauma. And so,
Yeah.
the average child that's been trafficked will relapse 5 to 7 times. And that's
Wow.
really a trend that we're seeing true
Mhm.
with the kids that we work with. But the great thing is there's something called an upward spiral. And so when a
Okay.
kid runs away and then they see you show up for them when they're recovered again, they're like, what are you doing here? Like, how did you find me and why do you care? And so it just
Mhm.
provides those opportunities to continue to build trust. And so, over the past 3.5 years, we've really built trust with this young lady,
Yeah.
eaten a lot of hamburgers and french fries and all the fun things till I can't eat them anymore. But
Oh.
just really seeing her recognize that there are healthy relationships out there and she can trust people again. We're about to walk with her through a delivery of a baby, and it's just super exciting. We were able to do a shower and just take part in those. And she's actually someone we're looking at as bringing on as a survivor leader when she gets further
Yeah.
along in the journey, because she wants other young girls to understand that they don't have to do that. They don't have to
Yeah.
down that road that she did, and she wants to provide empowerment and encouragement to them to
Yeah.
and so it's just a beautiful journey. And she just sends these sweet notes now, whereas it used to be that I had to always text her to reach out, and now she's
Mhm.
texting me to check on me. Hey, how are you today, Miss Elissa? She'll check in on me, and she's like,
Aw.
I've been there when I haven't had a parent. And it's not
Yeah.
that we don't try to step into that role as a family person, but as a healthy relationship and try to expand
Mhm.
that network. And so she has a mentor and she has an advocate, and she just has a lot of people that love her and are cheering her on. And she's doing really well. Just recently moved into her own apartment. She has her own car now, which is a really big deal for these kiddos.
Yeah.
And then she's about to deliver a baby. So it's just a really
Oh,
exciting journey.
yeah.
Yeah. So I could go on all day with stories. So I don't know if we have time
Yeah.
for another. Let me know.
I love that. I was just gonna say, like, I mean, just being through like some of my own emotional pain and trauma, like what I've learned through Christian therapy is a lot of times we will test the people that we love or love us. And I was thinking it's a true picture of unconditional love when they go back 5 to 7 times into it. Like, why are they doing that? Well, they've never really had that safe, secure love. So even when you present that unconditional love and acceptance, they don't even know, is it real? Like, can I trust this? And they kind of go back to the way of life they know. And then when they come back and you're there, it's like they've tested you, they've tested your love, and you've stayed strong. Then that begins to heal them. So I get that, and sometimes, like, even with Christian therapy, they'll say test away, whether it's your spouse or whoever, because you haven't known that love before. And so you kind of wonder, well, if I really screw up, will they still love me? And so that's all a part of the healing journey. So that it seems like, oh my gosh, that's disappointing that that happens, but really it's a part of their journey. And like you said, it becomes an upward spiral. And I just love hearing that you guys just stick with them. And I just applaud you, Elissa. I'm like, you have to have so much patience and like love to walk with people in that way. It kind of feels pastoral, like you're willing to, walk with them through the valleys, through the mountaintops. And it's awesome that your whole organization is that way. I love to hear that. So say
Yeah,
someone is, yeah, go ahead.
we are faith based, and so that's
Okay,
really
good.
a cool part. We're faith based 501c3 under the government, and so what that does is it allows us a lot of different freedoms. But one thing is that we will serve kids no matter what. We serve all youth no matter what they identify as, where they're at in their journey, and we just really see as love, God's
Yeah,
love really is the key. And so we don't push the beliefs or the values, but I will guarantee you that probably every kid I've worked with has asked me, like, why do you keep showing up? Like, what is it why would you want to do this when you can do so many other things? Or why would you want to be with me? Nobody
yeah,
wants to be with me. I'm not wanted. I'm basically trash to society. And it's like, it's being able to turn those things around and really speak life over them. And that's really what equips us. We have kind of an in-house saying, free people, free people. And what that means is we spend a lot of time with our staff on personal journeys of healing, because it takes healed people, not
yeah.
perfect people, but people willing to walk on a journey of healing themselves, that then we can offer that to other people by loving them unconditionally, by showing them
Mhm.
love, and just letting them know that there's forgiveness, there's healing, there's hope, and there's peace, because there's
Yeah.
not a lot of peace in the world that these youth have come from. And so
Mhm.
one of the greatest gifts that I feel like we're able to give as we seek God for his peace and all of that. We're able to just share that with the kids, and it's powerful, and you
Yeah.
can see it change things.
I love that. Just that love and what you said, heal people, heal people. They say hurting people hurt people and heal people heal. And I remember at one point, the kind of like the light bulb went off for me. Like someone said, Amy, people may have hurt you, but people will also help you heal. So like a lot of times when you've been hurt, you put up that wall, right? And you don't want to let anyone in. And I mean, we're going through a lot in our world right now. And I think it's sometimes easy to put up the wall, but there's still people that need to be loved, and we need to love them. And so I do agree, it's our faith, it's God's love that enables us to love people. And I kind of feel like God has been teaching me about love and trust are two different things. Like, God didn't say I'm calling you to trust everyone, but he said I'm calling you to love everyone. Like we ultimately trust God, and then experience his love, and then we can love people regardless, right? And forgive. And so yeah, that's powerful. I think it's awesome that you guys are faith-based, and yet, like you said, you don't try to push it on. It's not mandatory or anything, but it really is what gives you the motivation to do the work you're doing. So I love that. Okay, say someone's watching or listening and they're like, hey, I want to get on board, I want to help. Maybe they live in Dallas, or maybe they live somewhere else, and they just want to support the work that you do at Traffic 911. How can they help? Let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you locally, wherever you are in the world, to really look. Just Google local organizations that,
Okay.
work against human trafficking. And our agency focuses on youth ages 9 to 17, and then we walk with them into adulthood and so forth. But there are some amazing agencies that just work with adult victims.
Mhm.
We work with both boys and girls, and so some agencies just work with one or the other. But I
Okay.
would just see what pulls your heartstrings. And if
Yeah.
this is like, no, I could never do that, that's far too hard, that's okay too. It's not for everybody, and we want to
Mhm.
walk in the passions and the giftings that God has given us individually. So
Mhm.
if it's that you want to sponsor a gift
Yeah.
card drive, because we use gift cards for kiddos to buy
Yeah.
Whataburger and McDonald's sometimes, and I try to get them to go to Panera. They're like, what's Panera? But I like their mac and
I
cheese, so
like
I can usually reel them in with some good mac and cheese. But you know gift card drives, giving online, and really just being a voice in your community is the biggest thing. And
Mhm.
every community should have a task force, and I'm not saying they do.
Mhm.
Texas has been very proactive, and I'm super grateful for that because it allows us more resources to serve these youth. But just look around your community, see if there's a task force, that fights human trafficking on whatever level, whether that's youth or adults, and see if you can volunteer. We're always in need of volunteers, and we have a wonderful group of volunteers that after children have walked with us for a good season and are in more of a stable place, we assign them a community mentor, someone in their area that can also walk alongside of them. And what our goal is to really be the church, because we don't just need one person to be their savior. We're not their savior, but we can engage them with multiple healthy relationships that are virtuous in their community, and that they can see that they can have healthy adult relationships, and they can be loved and give love without anything expected in return. And so, yeah, just get involved in your community and be a voice, and pay attention. But our website is www.traffic911.com. And so there's the parental resources on there. There's things about legislation, and there's some different video things that provide resources about not only the victims of trafficking, but also the demand piece, which is who are purchasing these kids. And I think that's an important part to be aware of. And some people are really passionate to stop the demand, because
Mhm.
most of the time, the people who are buying sex don't want to be buying it. They have an addiction and they need
Mm.
help. And
Okay.
so we want to address that issue as
Yeah.
well, because they need help. They
Mhm.
need freedom,
Yeah.
and then these children will have more freedom. If we don't have
Yeah.
people buying kids for
Yeah.
sex, we're not gonna, we're
That's
gonna
good.
have
Yes.
that piece. So
That's so
I
important. I'm glad you
actually
rated.
want
Yeah, I'm
to,
glad you talked about that because I don't think it's often talked about. And maybe that's something, in like a future, I don't know, to talk about that whole part, because there is redemption, there is, forgiveness, and there is a way out. So if someone's listening and watching, I don't know, do you have a way for those people to reach out? So I'm kind of thinking of two things. You shared your website, but I know you mentioned there's a human trafficking hotline. Can you share that? And do you know, is there a place people could reach out to if they're struggling? Like maybe they are the buyer, they're caught up in sex addiction. Like, where can they reach out for help?
one great website is called Fight the New Drug, and it relates to the connection between pornography and purchasing sex, and that's a real thing. It's
Yeah.
there's tons of research on it, just in terms of it's usually a slow fade. You might look one time, but if you keep looking, there's going to be a greater addiction occurring, and how that plays into purchasing. So that's a great website. And then on our website as well, there's some more resources for
Okay.
that. Locally, we have an agency called The Net, and
Hmm.
they work with sex buyers to try to provide a way out for them. So,
Okay, that's good to know. And then what did you say the human trafficking hotline is? Did you share
oh,
that? Can you
yeah,
share
let me pull
that?
it up on my phone right here.
Okay. I'm putting you on the spot. Thank you for
No,
your
no problem.
flexibility.
I think it's great to put it in your
Mhm.
just put it in your
Yeah.
contacts, because then it's there and you can pull it up really
Yeah.
quickly.
That's
So
good.
that number is 1-888-373-7888. 1-888-373-7888. and they'll ask you for information, they'll gather that information, and then they'll circle back with your local law enforcement. But I always tell people to call your local law enforcement too, because they're the boots on the ground. They can get to that kiddo or that person who's being kept against their will. They can get to that person quicker. National Human Trafficking Hotline will provide you resources, and then they'll circle back with law enforcement. But for the quickest response, you want your local folks to get involved.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. And then I will share those websites and also the human trafficking hotline. I'll share the number on the screen so everyone can see, and then they can record those as well. So we covered a lot. It's awesome. Good stuff. I'm so thankful for everything you shared with us. I feel like it's so important, and like raising the awareness, educating people, and letting us know all the amazing things you're doing at Traffic 911. It's very exciting. So thank you, Elissa, for joining us here today on Support Someone Saturday. And thank you to all of our viewers and everyone who's tuned in to watch. We appreciate you supporting us. Again, if you want more information, you can reach out to Elissa at traffic911.com. And we'll also share the other info on the screen. So thank you, Elissa, and wishing you all the best down there in Dallas. And have a blessed Saturday, everyone.
Thank you.